Pope Francis admitted to Rome Hospital for a second abdominal surgery in 2 years. Plus, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in Washington, D.C., seeking stronger economic ties with the U.S. Thanks for staying with us. We continue the program in Italy, where Pope Francis has been admitted in hospital for surgery on his abdomen. According to the Vatican, he is expected to stay at Rome's Gemelli Hospital for several days to recover from the hernia operation. The spokesperson, Matteo Bruni, says the hernia is causing recurrent, painful, and worsening symptoms. The 86-year-old has faced a series of health issues in recent years and uses a cane and wheelchair due to persistent knee ailments. On Tuesday, the Pontiff had spent around 40 minutes at the same Roman hospital on having a pre-operation procedure. In the meantime, faithfuls in St. Peter's Square are wishing Pope Francis a quick recovery. Francis, who became Pope 10 years ago, is missing part of one lung. It was removed when he was a young man in his native Argentina. Since he assumed the papacy, he has had to cancel events, sometimes at the last minute because of health issues. He was first hospitalized as Pope in 2021 for an operation to remove part of his colon. This procedure was to repair a hernia, most likely caused by scars from surgery in 2021.
The Vatican announced unexpectedly this morning that the Pope would undergo surgery this afternoon, basically to repair a hernia that might have been caused by previous surgery. They said that he would need to spend several days in hospital after the operation, which would be taking place under a general anesthetic. So I think there is concern over his health, and this is an operation which the experts say often needs repeating because it's a problem that recurs quite often. So all eyes will be on the Gemelli Hospital in the coming days, and hopefully we will get a quick update this evening on his condition.
We'll give you more on that a little bit later in the program. For now, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is in the U.S. seeking stronger economic ties with the country. According to Prime Minister, Britain intends to put its economic ties with the United States on the same footing as the two countries' defense and security cooperation to help both counter global threats. This is Mr. Sunak's first visit to Washington after taking office in October. Mr. Sunak arrived at the Andrews Air Force Base in Prince George's County, Maryland, late on Tuesday evening and was welcomed by U.S. Chief of Protocol Rufus Gifford and Dame Karen Pierce, the U.S. British ambassador. On his Day 2 visit to the U.S. Capitol, Sunak will meet with business leaders, politicians in Congress, as well as President Joe Biden. And the race is on for the 2024 U.S. presidential elections as more Republican politicians throw their hat in the ring, joining a growing field led by former President Donald Trump. On Wednesday, former Vice President Mike Pence, who served alongside Donald Trump, challenged his former boss for the Republican presidential nomination. He has officially launched his campaign and will face Trump and at least 10 others in a crowded Republican field that is essentially seen as a two-man race between Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Pence will be holding a campaign kickoff event near Des Moines, Iowa's capital, followed by a CNN town hall event. Pence's campaign declared his candidacy to the Federal Election Commission on Monday.
The land of opportunity, beacon of democracy, the shining city on the hill, land of the free, home of the brave, the United States of America. As a son of the heartland, grandson of an Irish immigrant, those aren't just words. My family has lived the American dream. I had the great honor to serve in Congress, as governor, and as your vice president. And I'll always be proud of the progress we made together for a stronger, more prosperous America. But today, our country's in a lot of trouble. President Joe Biden and the radical left have weakened America at home and abroad. The American dream is being crushed under runaway inflation. Wages are dropping. Recession is looming. Our southern border is under siege, and the enemies of freedom are on the march around the world. And worse still, timeless American values are under assault as never before. We're better than this. We can turn this country around, but different times call for different leadership. Today, our party and our country need a leader that'll appeal, as Lincoln said, to the better angels of our nature. I have long believed to whom much is given, much will be required. My family and I have been blessed beyond measure with opportunities to serve this nation, and it'd be easy to stay on the sidelines. But that's not how I was raised. That's why today, before God and my family, I'm announcing I'm running for President of the United States. We can bring this country back. We can defend our nation and secure our border. We can revive our economy and put our nation back on a path to a balanced budget, defend our liberties, and give America a new beginning for life. President Reagan described us as a shining city on the hill. And above all, he called on Americans to renew optimism and believe in themselves again.
And yesterday, we brought to you the news of the Pope, who had visited Rome's Gemelli Hospital for clinical tests and then returned to his residence. We now understand the Pontiff has been hospitalized, as we mentioned before, and is scheduled for abdominal surgery under anesthetic. So the Pope is set to remain in hospital for some time. To discuss this further, joining us now is Sabina Castelfranco, Voice of America's correspondent in Rome, for more on the Pope's health. Hello, Sabina. What do we know so far? What are the circumstances around the Pope's surgery? What does it entail?
The Pope is suffering from a hernia, according to what Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni said in a statement. This is a hernia that is causing recurrent, painful, and worsening symptoms. And this is a hernia that gets formed normally over a scar from a previous surgery. And let's not forget that he underwent a colon surgery, Pope Francis, in July 2021. So that's less than 2 years ago. So the surgery that he underwent today has actually ended now. The surgery lasted 3 hours, and according to the Vatican, there were no complications. So what he underwent was a laparotomy and abdominal wall surgery under general anesthesia.
Okay, thank you for that. And we saw that the Pope held his weekly general audience calling for peace in Ukraine. Were there any indications about his health at that time?
Not at all. This morning, he appeared well and healthy, and he went around St. Peter's Square in his Pope Mobile, greeting the faithful as he normally does. So there was no indication that he would be going in for this surgery. Yesterday, of course, he did go in for some tests, but we were told that it was just a checkup. But clearly that must have been some sort of pre-hospitalization for the Pope for this surgery that he underwent today. And it must have been decided by the doctors that it was an urgent matter to be dealt with very quickly.
And there have been a number of reports on previous health scares earlier this year alone. He's had several visits to the Gemelli Hospital for a respiratory infection, I believe, and seen on a number of occasions, I think around February, in a wheelchair while on a trip to Sudan. Are these all part of a buildup to what he's now facing?
Well, certainly the colon surgery that he underwent 2 years ago, yes. Now, pneumonia is what he was diagnosed with at the end of March, and he spent 3 days at the Gemelli Hospital. And then he has another ailment, which has caused him to be in a wheelchair. And that has to do with his knee, the ligaments of his knee. But because the Pope does not react very well to general anesthesia, and this was something that he mentioned after his colon operation, he decided that he would not be treated for his knee ligaments, and that is why he has been confined to a wheelchair at certain times, and also or using a cane to help himself move around. So they're not all related to what is happening to him now.
And what is the Catholic Church saying about what's going on with him, and how are people reacting around him?
Well, certainly there were a lot of journalists that showed up at the Gemelli Hospital today for this operation, and a press conference is expected later on this evening about how things went. The journalists are certainly concerned. I mean, they've seen the Pope having a number of ailments and difficulties this year alone. And of course, it all started 2 years ago. The Pope became Pontiff, elected head of the Catholic Church in 2013. He is 86 years old, and he is one of the oldest, one of the popes that has stayed on the longest. Certainly his predecessor quit in 2003, and at the time he was 85 years old. Now, Pope Francis has said that if he feels that he can no longer manage to do his job properly as head of the Catholic Church, he would think about resigning.
Thanks so very much, Sabina. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And moving back to the West, and Rishi Sunak, former New Jersey Governor Christie, has also formally launched his 2024 presidential campaign. Christie served as an advisor to Trump's successful 2016 campaign, but has since become a vocal critic over his false claims that the 2020 election was rigged. In Goffstown, New Hampshire, Christie said Trump had made the U.S. smaller and hit out at divisive politics. He also played down Trump's lead among the field of candidates seeking the Republican nomination.
We have candidates for president who say we shouldn't care about what's happening in Ukraine. We shouldn't care that Russia wants to take a free and freedom-loving country and put it back under its thumb. But that's not America's concern. We have candidates for president who are talking about issues that are so small that sometimes it's hard to even understand them. But let me tell you why they're talking about those small issues. For the very same reason that leaders who are pretenders have always talked about small issues, to divide you further. And when I said to him, I can't do it, it's against the law, he said, fight it in the courts. The question is, not if you want America to be first or not, it's how. How do we become first? And you have people in my party, our party, who are saying, fill the moat, pull up the drawbridge, and let's not worry about the rest of the world, everybody. We got plenty of problems here, and we got to fix these problems that we've got here, and we can't afford to engage with the world. Well, guess what? When we stop engaging with the world, we're no longer going to be the biggest economy in the world. We're not. They're going to trade with China. And then China's going to put the screws to us and say, hey, you want to continue to trade with us to another country? You can't trade with America anymore.
Rishi Sunak is now in the U.S. for his first official visit as British Prime Minister. Sunak arrived in Washington late on Tuesday and is expected to be hosted by President Joe Biden at the White House. The UK leader's two-day visit will include a meeting with business leaders and some lawmakers. Downing Street says Sunak will push to reaffirm economic, cultural, and security ties between the two allies amid the fallout from Brexit and increased U.S. focus on Asia. Channel's TV correspondent Maria Bird joins us now to discuss what to expect. Maria, can you elaborate on the purpose of Rishi Sunak's visit to Washington and what we can expect to come out of this visit?
Well, this is obviously a very interesting time in our world economics, and specifically as we look at what's happening between the U.S. and China, and really most of the major economic powers within the world are definitely looking to see how they can potentially rival with China. So I think that's going to be one of the largest conversations, is really around the economics and partnerships and looking at trade deals between the U.S. And the U.K. Now, I think another area that we should be following is whether or not the U.S. is going to ask the U.K. to be a greater ally and partner and greater support with the war against Russia and supporting Ukraine, because obviously the U.S. has vowed and provided quite a bit of economic stability to the war and to Ukraine, and it obviously is still requiring further support.
What implications does it have for the UK if, depending on which way politics goes, if Biden wins, what kind of implications would be there? And if Trump wins, what would it look like?
If we look at historically, the U.S. and the U.K. have had a great partnership, great relationship. Have they been a little bit stronger during Democratic parties winning the White House? Some would say yes. But even with a Republican Party, we still see that partnership there and continuing with many of the trade relationships and obviously agreements and partnerships and being allies in various economic and also world issues. And so I think we're not going to see a major change. I think the question is whether or not the UK and the US will be able to be greater partners through the Biden administration. And clearly this is a first step toward that. So it's likely that there would be a greater participation and greater partnership if Biden was to get reelected for 2024. And we already know that former President Trump was ready to take China on personally, just himself as the president of the U.S. previously. And so I think that would be something that he would be looking to do if he or any other Republican was to win the White House. So whether that alliance would be there as strong, I think that would be the area of question.
And welcome back to The World Today. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, discussing bilateral relations. According to the Saudi state news agency, SPA, both leaders also discussed aspects of cooperation in various fields and developments in regional and international situations. Mr. Blinken arrived in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday on a mission to steady Washington's relationship with Riyadh after years of deepening disagreements on issues ranging from Iran, regional security, and oil prices. Still on bilateral relations, the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris celebrated the 75th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel on Tuesday with a speech honoring the U.S.-Israel relationship. Harris, who was accompanied by her husband, Doug Emhoff, who is the first Jewish person to serve in the role as the spouse of the vice president, also recognized historic agreements made by Israel and other countries in the region, including Egypt, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, as well as Morocco. Mr. Emhoff has made fighting against anti-Semitism his key issue in his position as second gentleman. According to the U.S. State Department, Israel became a nation on May 14, 1948, when David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel. U.S. President Harry Truman recognized the new nation on the same day.
The U.S.-Israel relationship is America's ironclad commitment to the security of Israel. This commitment endures, not only because it is in America's strategic interest, but because it is the right thing to do. Our administration believes that in order to promote the security of Israel, the region, and the United States, we must continue to create a more integrated and interconnected Middle East. That is why we will continue to build on Israel's peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, and on Israel's historic agreements with the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco. As we do that, the Biden-Harris administration will continue to work toward a world where Israelis and Palestinians can live safely and securely and enjoy equal measures of freedom, prosperity, and democracy. And we believe that the best way to achieve this goal is through two states. We also believe that for Israel to be secure and for the Jewish people everywhere to be safe, we must stand up and fight back against anti-Semitism wherever and whenever we see it.
At least 2 people have been killed and 5 others wounded after a man armed with 4 handguns fired into a crowd outside a high school graduation ceremony in Richmond, Virginia on Tuesday. Police say they arrested one suspect, a 19-year-old man who knew one of the victims and shot at him amid the crowd that had just emerged from the Hunot High School's commencement ceremony inside a theater on the campus of Virginia Commonwealth University. According to Richmond Police Chief Rick Edwards, the suspect is likely to be charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder in addition to other offenses. The United States has grown accustomed to mass shootings in public places such as schools, shopping centers, and churches. The mass shooting was the country's 279th in the first 157 days of 2023, according to the Gun Violence Archive, using the definition of 4 or more people are shot or killed in a single incident, not including the shooter.
Tragically, 2 of our life-threatening victims have passed away. We still have the same amount of 7 total gunshot wound victims. The 4 of them that are non-life-threatening are a 14-year-old male, a 32-year-old male, a 55-year-old male, and a 58-year-old male. The 1 remaining life-threatening victim is 31 years old.
And a 58-year-old white woman, Susan Lawrence, accused of shooting dead a black mother of 4 children. G.K. Owens has been arrested in Florida, United States. Owens was shot through the door in front of her son by Lawrence, who complained about her children playing outside the neighborhood. Today, Marion County Sheriff's Office said that Lawrence was arrested on charges of manslaughter with a firearm, culpable negligence, battery, and 2 counts of assault. Authorities say Owens was shot through the door of her neighbor's home near Ocala, Florida on Friday. A civil rights attorney for the deceased family, Ben Crumpin, demanded that her killer be arrested and charged in court. The suspect, after being interviewed, claimed that she had acted in self-defense against the Owens who had been trying to break down her door prior to her discharging her firearm. And the death toll from the India train crash has risen to 275, with over 1,000 injured after 2 passenger trains collided in India's Odisha state on Friday. This disaster marks the country's deadliest rail accident in more than a decade. White body bags were seen scattered along the site of the crash, while rescue operations were underway as onlookers watched. The collision occurred when the Howrah Superfast Express running from Bangalore to Howrah, West Bengal, collided with the Coromandel Express, which runs from Kolkata to Chennai. Families of victims have been at hospitals trying to identify the bodies of relatives, even as railway officials recommend a criminal probe of the crash. Officials say only 45 bodies have been identified and 3 handed over to relatives. Prince Harry returns to the High Court in London today for a second day of grilling over his claims that British tabloids targeted him with phone hacking and other unlawful behavior. The prince, who became the first senior British royal to appear in a witness box in more than a century, on Tuesday said the press had destroyed his relationships and that he believed British media and its government had hit rock bottom. He faced almost 5 hours of cross-examination on Tuesday from Andrew Green, the lawyer for Mirror Group newspapers, MGN, the publisher of the Daily Mirror, Sunday Mirror, and Sunday People, which he and 100 others are suing over allegations of widespread unlawful information gathering between 1991 and 2011. In a 50-page written witness statement in questioning, he said the press had blood on its hands, destroyed his adolescence, ruined relationships with friends and girlfriends, and sowed paranoia and mistrust since 1996 when he was a schoolboy. His anger at suggestions his mother, Princess Diana, was a victim of phone hacking before her death in 1997 was also clear. And finally, on the program, history has it that when Prince Harry entered the witness box in his lawsuit against the publisher of the Daily Mirror, he became the first senior member of the royal family to testify in court since the late 19th century. Queen Victoria's eldest son, Prince Albert Edward, testified twice in the divorce proceedings of a woman with whom he was accused of having an affair with. He denied it, and later in a slander case involving a man accused of cheating at cards. Now, he has been known at the time as the Prince of Wales and went on to become King Edward VII. He was the great-grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II, Harry's grandmother. And that's all for this show. See you tomorrow.